Hello there! If you hear stuff in the background, it's just my cats. They're playing and being silly, of course. Let me first welcome all you new and returning viewers. I am so excited for this month because it is November. At the time of this recording, I feel like it's kind of late, but that's because I have a whole bunch of schoolwork to do, so gonna try to keep this a little bit more brief. We'll see how that goes, and I'm gonna try not to do as many cuts as I have in the past. But, again, we'll see how that goes. I tend to trip up on my words if I don't practice a lot, so, yeah. Anyway, my name is Audra Wilson. It is November, which means that it is Thanksgiving season here in America, and I thought this month could really use a shot of thankfulness and being grateful. So, despite all the craziness this year, I think it's very important to remember that we should be thankful for at least the things we do have and still have in our lives. So one of those things is sci-fi and fantasy and mythology for me. So I'm going to be thankful for all of that this month, and that will reflect in all of my posts. So with that being said, let me give a huge shout out to my friends and family, especially my husband, who all deal with my insatiable desire for writing equipment, understanding my long-winded explanations that you just smile and nod to because you really don't know what's going on in my head, even though you're trying, and for dealing with pretty much everything and being such a huge support system. I don't think I could do any of what I have done without you guys. So thank you so much. As for you new and returning viewers, I am very thankful for you guys too, but you guys will get a bigger shout out next video. Let's get up close here. If you'd like to stay up to date with my works in progress, short stories, and poems, please check out my website, audrabwilson.com, and sign up for the newsletter for exclusive content, sneak peeks, and a first chance for beta reading. I am finally reopening back up for beta reading for Unveiling the Facade. I had a few setbacks, including going back to school for my second degree, but I'm ready to get started in doing that again. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I will be very grateful for any support you give me. Alright, so on to my top 10 sci-fi and fantasy pieces of fiction that I am very grateful to have in my life. There are definitely other things that I am grateful for in the sci-fi fantasy genres other than this top 10, but these are the things that I really could come up with first, so that probably means that they are my top 10. There have also been other works of fiction and nonfiction writing that has influenced me, so that will be in a later video this month for things that I'm grateful for because of inspiration reasons. Feel free to leave your top 10 in the comments below. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So, without further ado, let's get on to my top 10. Number 10. Charlotte's Web. Now, this one might actually come as a surprise to some people. This is not a story that I bring up a lot simply because it doesn't really fit my genre nowadays. But when I was a kid, this was really the first book that really got me into reading fantasy fiction. There were other things that I was reading before this, but this was really the first introduction I had to fantasy fiction that I actually read. And even though magic is not necessarily stated in the book itself, there is a sort of magic that surrounds Charlotte and Wilbur just in general. Without the fantastical elements of Charlotte's Web, I am not entirely sure whether I would have gotten into reading fantasy fiction. At least at that time, I read it for the first time in second grade, so I'm not sure whether it would have been a huge part of my life. It probably would have been based on the other entrances on this list, but at the same time, you never know. So this was really my first introduction to that, and that's why I am so grateful for Charlotte's Web. Number 9, fairy tales. Now, these are the stories that I was read to as a child or I was told as a child. Most of these I didn't actually start reading until I was much older and could really understand them. And even as a child, when I was told these stories or read these sort of stories, it wasn't to the extent that Hans Christian Andersen, Aesop's Fables, or Grimm fairy tales really were. Those stories are a lot more in-depth, but that also kind of goes along with how people raise their kids in the modern day. So that's pretty much why I didn't actually read the real stories until I was much older. I am definitely very grateful to fairy tales in general. I love the thought of them, and even the simplified and, for lack of a better term, Disney-fied versions of them are very intriguing and fun to watch and listen to. So yes, I'm very grateful for just fairy tales in general. Number 8, The Chronicles of Narnia. Many who know me probably wouldn't expect this one to be so high in my estimation. Let me just say I am thankful for The Chronicles of Narnia. That doesn't mean they are my absolute favorite. I don't really read them over and over again like I do other things on this list. I don't watch the movies over and over again. I am excited for the new Netflix versions of these stories, but at the same time, I do realize that they are mostly geared towards children, so it is not something that I gravitate towards as an adult. However, when the movies were first coming out, I got that book that I just held up a second ago for, I think it was Christmas or something. Christmas or my birthday, one of the two. There really is a sense of growing up in all of these. I was a preteen, I think, when it first came out, so there was a lot of growing up that I had to do. So I am definitely thankful to Chronicles of Narnia. It kind of goes along the same lines as Charlotte's Web. Chronicles of Narnia really encouraged me to actually dive into another one on this list, which I will get to in a little bit, but you probably already know what it is based on who the author of the Chronicles of Narnia is. I don't really have a book to represent this one, so I'm going to go with Disney, the animated Disney films, and Pixar. So many might think that this belongs with the whole fairy tales thing. I like to distinguish between the two because Disney and Pixar, first of all, Pixar doesn't really deal with the fairy tale aspect of things, and while Disney does, Disney puts its own spin on everything. Cinderella is a different kind of story. The Tangled is a definitely different story than Rapunzel from Grimm fairy tales. And you can yell at the screen until you are blue in the face, but it's not going to change my opinion, and this is my channel, so welcome to my world. What I'm so thankful for with most of Disney and Pixar's animated films is just the wholesomeness of everything. I love how it makes me feel, and the older stuff just makes me nostalgic. The newer stuff, while some of it does kind of irk me a little bit, it still fills me with nostalgia, and I will definitely be showing all this stuff to my kids when I have them. So it's stuff that I still enjoy to this day. I may not watch a lot of it all the time, unlike some other things on this list that I'll be getting to in a minute, but it is definitely one of those nostalgia things that I love to partake in. As for the allegations that Disney presents false expectations for relationships and life, I'm gonna call your bluff on that. If we can't blame Grand Theft Auto for crime, then we can't blame Disney for our own false expectations. That, unfortunately, is the fault of the parents. It's not the job of entertainment to present real expectations. It's the job of entertainment to entertain. It's up to you to decide later in life how realistic it is or not. And mostly, that has to do with your parents. Did your parents show you that Prince Charming is not always Prince Charming? My dad actually brought this up to me when I was younger and becoming a teenager. There's always unrealistic expectations in Hollywood movies. It just is. In TV shows, in pretty much any entertainment, there's going to be unrealistic expectations of relationships. So it really falls on you to decipher what is real and what is not. Number 6, Harry Potter. Now, many who know me probably would have thought this would have been higher on my list, and I can understand why you would think that, simply because of how much I love Harry Potter. But again, this is a thankful list, not necessarily a best list. And honestly, I got into Harry Potter a bit late. I was not a fan at first, partially because people told me that I wouldn't like it. I don't know why I believed them. I just did for some reason. And I didn't actually get into the Harry Potter series until the 5th book was coming out. And that was also around the time that the first Harry Potter movie came out. So the movies kind of brought me into Harry Potter. So there's that. And honestly, at first, I was a bit of a scaredy cat, and I thought that Voldemort was the scariest thing in the world. Now that only lasted like less than a year before I actually got back into it. But yeah, I was very much a scaredy cat. And part of that is because I have very vivid dreams. Especially when they involve things that look creepy. And so at the end, I don't think this is a spoiler alert because of just how long this has been out, but at the end when Quirrell turns to dust and Voldemort's ethereal head comes up and kind of flows around the room and, hits Harry in the chest, I thought that was very scary as a child, and yeah, I did not like that for a very long time. Okay, maybe not a very long time, but long enough to where it was kind of a challenge for me to get past it at one point. But I did, and I fell in love with the series, of course, as you do, and realized that I am truly a Ravenclaw. But no, I am very thankful for this series, and I'm also thankful to my grandmother because she was the one who convinced me that I could potentially like Harry Potter, because I was a stubborn child and apparently listened to my peers a little too much, who said that I wouldn't like it, so I didn't read it. And of course now I completely regret that, because I could have been a huge fan a long time ago. Now, I am not a fan of The Cursed Child, and I believe most Harry Potter fans would get behind me on that. I don't think I know any fans of the books that actually liked that one. If you did, let me know and tell me why you liked it, because I certainly have no idea why you would like it, but, to each their own. And Harry Potter was also the first introduction I had to fan fiction and fan art, so I still to this day, I love the fan art, and it's really fun to go back and look at some of the amazing artistry that came from that. The fan fiction, as fan fiction goes, there were a lot of gems, but for the life of me, because of how much fan fiction I used to read, I cannot remember one of them with any clarity. So, number 5, Beowulf, the Odyssey, and other ancient texts and literature. Okay, I've made it to the top 5, so this is where things get really difficult. Because despite this order, it can really change at any time because of my mood, but all 5 of these are things that I am very, very grateful for in my life. So here we go. I absolutely love epic poetry. It has been one of the biggest influences for me in my own narrative poetry and in my books in general. That's why I am so thankful for things like Beowulf, the Odyssey, the Iliad, the Ramayana, and the Epic of Gilgamesh always has a really special place in my heart. So pretty much any ancient text, because these texts were what brought us what we have today in literature. Even if we don't think that we're influenced by ancient civilizations, we absolutely are. And the archetypes that we see and have studied in this day and age were present all the way back then. And I love it. I love the archetypes that they presented. I love the majesty of everything. And I mean, seriously, I did my senior seminar for my first degree on Beowulf and the Odyssey. And so, yeah, I am very grateful for those 2 in particular, because that got me to where I am as a person, as a writer, as a reader. Number 4, all mythology. So ancient texts always inevitably bring me to mythology. And the reason I'm grateful for all mythology, and I'm not just talking about the ancient texts that talk about mythology, is because mythology comes from all kinds of places. And it's an insight into ancient cultures, which lead to modern cultures eventually. And it's the ground foundation for most of what our own cultures believe and think, and the culturalistic differences are more apparent in ancient mythology. But it also shows just how similar humans are all around the world. Almost every culture has a creation myth, and a lot of them involve floods. Who would have thought? Almost every culture has a trickster figure. Almost every culture has life lessons that their myths teach, and always try to explain how the world came to be and how it came to be this particular way. It's really amazing. The human mind does work very similarly to each other, despite what conclusions we end up having at the end. I love learning about all kinds of European history and mythology. I love learning about Asian history and mythology. And I know that there are many different mythologies within every continent, but just to group them together for the sake of conciseness in this video, that's what I'm doing right now. My husband recently got me a book of Native American tales, which I am really excited to get into. That will be kind of reviewed later this month as well, because I absolutely find it fascinating, and just cultures fascinate me. They really do. They are just really incredible. Number 3, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I did warn you that this was very tough for me, right? Okay, so Avatar: The Last Airbender is just an amazing show. If you have never watched it, you do not understand how amazing this show is. Yes, it is an animated show, but it takes you on so many ups and downs, twists and turns, and so many feelings. Just so many feelings. And you never get the feeling that, okay, some things are a bit forced. Some of the comedy can be a little forced, but honestly, that's just how comedy works in TV shows sometimes. But the thing about Avatar: The Last Airbender is they really took the time to flush out everybody's character, to flush out the kinks. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a wonderful work of art. It has inspired so many people to do so many things. And you have one of my favorite old sage characters is so full of a lot of wonderful wisdom and thoughts. It has the best redemption arc of a character I have ever seen or read or anything. Best redemption arc ever to exist, as far as I can tell. It is just so perfect. Avatar: The Last Airbender was just so unique, and I think that more shows need to have that uniqueness that Avatar had. It was fun for young people. It was fun for people as old as I am. And honestly, I still watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. When it first came onto Netflix, I was on that because it is a really great show for pretty much all ages. Number 2. And there's 2 of these, but I only have representation for one of them, so sorry. Star Wars and Star Trek. Now, die-hard fans of both of these might get angry that I put them together. There's a reason I put them together. I am definitely more of a Star Wars fan than I am of a Trek fan, but I'm thankful for both of these because without both of these, the sci-fi genre would be Planet of the Apes and other even cheesier versions, at least in pop culture. So don't kill me for putting them together. The reason I put them together is because both of them paved the way for so many sci-fi tropes and just amazing sci-fi creativity that honestly without the 2 of them I don't think we would have had. Personally, the old sci-fi, particularly stuff like Planet of the Apes and other such movies, they're just a little too cheesy for me. And Star Trek and Star Wars both put a more serious edge on sci-fi. It wasn't just a cheesy alien flick. It wasn't just this weird scientific genre. It became so much more than what people expected of it. Star Wars, people didn't expect Star Wars to do as well as it did. Star Trek broke the mold on so many things in TV, and I'm thankful for the fact that they were able to do all of these things. I'm thankful that they were able to break through so many of the sci-fi cliches that they also enacted in some respects, but I for the most part, I think they broke the mold on a lot of things. And while I don't like everything about Star Trek and I don't like everything about Star Wars, I do absolutely appreciate what they were able to do. And finally, my number 1, Lord of the Rings. Okay, So this really shouldn't be much of a shock to my friends and family that I gave a shout out to. I love The Lord of the Rings. And I know that nowadays it probably wouldn't be as popular as it was back when it first came out, because nowadays prose needs to move things along a little bit quicker than most people are willing to give Lord of the Rings. And while I don't read the books every year as I used to, I definitely watch the extended versions of the movies every year. And there is a reason. There is just so much to unpack. I don't think that I will ever grow tired of this story. It's the classic fantasy that really re-put the fantasy genre on the map. The reason I say that is because up until J.R.R. Tolkien brought The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit into the world, the fantasy genre was generally just for children. In fairy tales, even his friend C.S. Lewis wrote a children's fantasy story. The Lord of the Rings really brought fantasy to the adults, and in such a beautiful, beautiful way. The story is so imaginative, and the world is so imaginative. You can imagine this place actually existing, and I think that's so wonderful, and it's something that I strive to do with my worlds that I create. I try to go into as much as I can into the culture so that when I'm writing that culture, it feels real. And that's exactly what The Lord of the Rings did. It made the elf culture feel real. The human culture felt real. The dwarves, the hobbits, everything felt so real. And I'm so thankful for Tolkien's abilities and what Tolkien inspired for generations to come. It really is just one of those things I am eternally grateful to have in my life as far as sci-fi and fantasy goes. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I have started a Silly Stories tab on my website with the motive of pretty much just having fun. Think of it as a writing workshop each month. This month's prompt is writing about a person who has to overcome some sort of obstacle, something small to others but huge for them. I will post all submissions to the website and shout out the author on social media with a link. My favorites will get an extra shout out in the newsletter, so don't forget to sign up for that. I look forward to seeing your submissions. I'm excited. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and all of the links to everything that I've just discussed will be in the description below. Until next time. Okay, this part I need to just... Good idea. Are you gonna come up here? Hello, sister. You're gonna be up here. You need to lay down. Come on. Loading head comes around. Yes, Ashlyn. Nice to see you again. You're in my life.